Alright, so I smashed one of these suckers on the weekend. That just goes in here for the steering, the collar. So I'm gonna do a short video of how to replace it on the Terova. So first thing's gonna be to undo the head, pull that apart, disconnect it, so we can then disconnect all this wiring, disconnect the lift assist. So that's like a big tape measure, so I'll have to figure out what we do there so it doesn't shoot back in when I disconnect it down here. Probably just, I don't know, put a clamp or something on it. I'll have a look at that. And then disconnect all that so then this shaft can slide out. Then we should be able to unbolt the gearbox and replace the collar. That's the plan. Alright, so here's inside. So this is the link one. So I've got a network cable there, which that's going to sort of suck because that feeds all the way through to the sounder. So I think I'm going to have to backfeed that. I can't just disconnect it easily. Anyway, cross that bridge when I get to it. These are heat shrink, so I'll have to take the heat shrink off and disconnect those. But anyway, oh no, actually, I won't need to take any of this out because I should just be able to disconnect those two and then pull that head off because these run out external. So yeah, that'll be easier. I'll just disconnect those two, undo the heat shrink, pull them apart, then that'll allow me to slide the shaft out and leave all this stuff here. So that'll be nice. Okay, so just disconnected the power wires down to the motor. Now I will get this screw out that goes through the shaft, the nut and bolt, and pull that out so the top comes off. This is that little bolt that goes through. Pull that out. Nuts there, and then this top bit should come off like that. So that's off. Feed the wires through, and that'll be that part. So far I just got the heat shrink that we pulled off, the nut and bolt that goes through the shaft, and the 4 screws that bolted the head together. And then we got our shaft like this. So now I'm gonna figure out a way to slide this up and lock that. I'll show you the other side. Slide this up, lock that in so it can't retract, and then disconnect it with this nut down here. Nut and bolt goes short, but I'm worried if I just undo that, it'll just spring back into here and then I won't be able to get it out. So I'm thinking I'll lock this in just as a precaution. Maybe I can just get this out with a flathead screwdriver and, I don't know, wrap something around it. Anyway, I'll let you know what I come up with soon. Alright, she's a bit skullduggery, but before I undo this piece, which by the look of it now, you have to actually undo this clamp with these 2 screws here, or 4 actually, and then you'll get to the bolt from the back which will hold that lift assist. I just sticky tape this up out of the way just to keep the tension off it, and I've just put a bolt, I've just taped a bolt to here because that'll stop that sliding back in. Like, you know, if you ever snap a tape measure and it goes back in and just go, you know, round in there, and then you're in trouble. So you might not have to do that. It might just stop, but I don't want to take the risk, so that's what I've done. So I've just released that now so you can see it's hitting on there, stopping it from coming in any further. So now I'll undo these 4 bolts or screws, get this clamp undone, undo this little sucker here from the other side, and then that'll undo that band. So now you can see I've undone this. This is a little sucker here, it's just like a little Allen key. So I'll get that out now and get that strap off. Looks like you just need to loosen it, and then it's like a keyway there, so little slotted hole. So that's that off. Just be careful with this strap, because that's got a fair few ugga duggers behind it, and yeah, you wouldn't want that hitting you. So yeah, when this shaft slides out from the top, you know, pull it backwards, you really want to watch that band. I can probably slide it out before, which I will. I think I'll just slide this up. I'll get that out. Yeah, so as I'm sliding that back, I'm just keeping my thumb on here as I slide, because that's going to be like one of those old slap bands when she comes out. If you just pulled that, that's just going to fling around heaps of tension. So keep your hand on here and hold that down, and then you can slowly release it back. There we go, so I've got it. There's a fair bit of tension there. So just slowly roll that back. There we go. So now I'm going to do the clamp. This is the depth adjuster. I took the standard one off. This is actually a couple of clamps off the Garmin Live Scope aftermarket mounts, because the big bolt that was on here, it used to always get caught up in the curly cord and give me the shit. So I'll undo that, slide that out. I'll get this off, this lift assist, and then I'll slide the shaft all the way out of the gearbox. So there's these two guys off. So that's what I was worried about, that flicking back inside there. I'm not sure if it would or if it would just stop, but I'm not about to find out. So that was the, I thought, sensible option. That's you'd have a standard one of those, just pull that off. So now we've got a clear shaft. I'll go back to the gearbox. So I'll pull that, slide that just directly out. So there you go. So that's out. No rocket science so far. So I'll now undo these little Allen keys at the base. I think there'll be, I don't know, maybe 6 of them by the look at that. And then I'm assuming the top cover will come off, but we'll see in a second. Man, these screws suck. They've obviously got a lot of Loctite or something on them. They'll fight you all the way home. So I'm going to just go get an impact gun, I think, for that. But you could persist and do it by hand, but you know, why do that when you can use a power tool? So my bit wasn't big enough, deep enough, so bit of ingenuity and just get your drill bit just about right on your old Allen key, because I didn't want to cut my Allen key enough. Just put it in there like that. Look at that. Alright, so they're all now loose. Figure out once I get the part, I'll tell you how it happens. Alright, so there's this one here too. So I'm not actually sure if that's holding it closed yet, but there's one underneath too, so I don't need to get to that yet. Let you know. Yeah, so a little bit of gentle persuasion on the front with a chisel and a hammer. Get it split apart. Looks like it is locked in at the bottom, so I'm going to have to take the sides off, I think. Get that pin out, and then get to that bottom nut, because it's it's right behind that pin there. So not really the ideal spot for it, but anyway. So there's that little pin through here. So yeah, one side. Oh yeah. So yeah, we'll get that little locking washer off in there and slide it through, and then in theory that should just come out. The gearbox should just come out. Do that now. Alright, so I've pulled that pin out. The other little washer's just sitting there. I actually just pushed it through. It's pretty easy. That's holding pressure, that lever. It's also, that's what that sits on, this bar. So just push that down and tap that bar through, and then yeah, she's out and we can get to that last screw. Alright, so I just slowly pry it around with a flathead screwdriver, just work my way around and around, just making sure I didn't damage this gasket. And I just carefully slid up. Just be careful, these gears come up when you pull the motor up because they got grease and stuff all over them. But I mean, they're pretty basic. You can see there. Try to get some light on the situation. How they sit in. So they just sort of all lock in. If you turn that one, then the main one will turn. Right, so now this is the part I've got to replace. So I guess there's a little washer on top, we pull that off, repeat the process, put the new one in. Here's the old one. So literally just pull this washer off the top, set the new one, pull the old one out like that, just comes out. It's got grooves, slot it back in. And that's it. Put it all back together. Okay, so pins back in. Not gonna lie, getting the cogs line back was a little bit fiddly, but what I ended up doing is inside, how you saw I had the cogs, or the gears I should say, sitting down. I removed the pins and I fitted them into the top part of the housing instead. And then when I lowered the top part down, you can actually see through the gap and see the like the holes where it's got to go down into, so that was much easier. So before I'm going to put all the bolts back in the bottom, I've just grabbed my remote and just giving it a test to make sure it sounds all normal, which it does. So pretty much we'll just reverse the process and get it all back together, clean this up with a bit of grease remover, and should be sweet. Alright, so I went around to all these, torqued all them up by hand. I just tightened them until the bolt broke and then backed them off half a turn. But on a serious note, I just work my way around like you would on a car tire. I just, did them, just tighten them up by feel, just, pretty firm because they are quite firm. Obviously you want a real nice seal around here where that gasket sits, so I just sort of ended up using the Allen key, and then I just had that in there and then a bit of an extension like this on there, and just sort of went around till it was firm. When a lot of you guys doing this will have a feel for how tight that's got to be. I'm sure there's a torque rating, but anyway, about that's good enough. Alright, so sides back on, this is back in. So now I'll just clean this up and put the shaft back in, connect all back up, and she should be done. Couple of things as well with your night fish, chuck a bit of tape over that. Same with your puck too, that's come off, but that's a pain. I reckon a couple of things Minn Kota should do on their design is have a switch or even something in the software that you can turn off these lights, or dull them. That would be nice, just if they're really dull. And the other thing is, I reckon, I don't know what you guys out there think, but automatic autopilot. So you have the automatic anchor, automatic turn the motor on function. but they don't have an automatic autopilot. I'm always like turning, you know, and going this way and going that way, and I'm always having to hit the autopilot just to keep you steered in that direction. I have it on all the time. I love it, but I'd love if it was just automatic, like you could just turn it on and just leave it on. That way, you know, whenever you do a hard turn, the boat just continues to go in the direction that you want to, not just continues to turn. Because if you want to do that, you just hold your finger on the button, you know. But anyway, I reckon automatic autopilot would be awesome. All right, I'll put the rest of this back together. Okay, so I'll slid the shaft back in. Easy peasy. Just support it, get it through straight. Easy. Okay, so getting lift assist back through, a little bit tricky, but I just taped a screwdriver on. Luckily I had this bit out here because it actually helped me get it back on. I had to go back because I realised once I got the shaft in, I couldn't poke the lift assist back through here because it's curling to the outside and it keeps getting caught. So I pulled the shaft back out, taped a screwdriver onto the end of the lift assist, poked it down through so it was just sort of sitting there, and then lined up this gap and just slid the shaft back through. And then once it got back through, I just put this over the top. I done it by myself, but you know, second person probably be handy for that, but not too bad. Alright, so put the screw back in, put all the rest of the shaft back together. So now just a couple of bits of heat shrink for here. Make sure you keep the twist in these wires as well, because that'll stop EMF. I'll do that up and then put the head back on. So there you go. Got the heat shrink back on there. I mean, you could just use electrical tape if you wanted, but I mean, heat shrink looks prettier, but there you go. I'll just put the head back on with the 4 screws and that should be it. Well, there you go. All back together. Pretty straightforward, really. No rocket science involved. Just pretty much just common sense the whole way. So yeah, I think anyone could give it a go if you can get hold of these guys. It's a bit tricky to get parts in Australia quickly, but get someone who can get the Minn Kota parts and order some of these collars, because yeah, if you smack into a tree or something while your motor's turned to the side, that's what will break them. And yeah, I'll show you. This little keyhole just cracks out of them, and that's the end of it. But yeah, that's the first time I've done it. So yeah, give it a crack, and hopefully this video will help you out. Cheers.